Cycling is a bit of a weird sport, isn't it? If you think about it, take a step back, hear me out. You wear tight, moisture-wicking clothing, you ride around with your mates on ridiculously expensive carbon fiber bikes, and then you go and smash yourself up all the hills to go sit at a cafe and drink an expensive coffee. So, cycling is a weird sport. I got into it about 5 years ago, and it's one of the most commonly asked questions I get. How did you get into cycling? And also, how did you get into making YouTube videos? So that's the story I'm going to tell you today. I thought to make this come full circle, I'm going to go on my first commute route that I used to do that got me into this whole mess of cycling. And I'll bring you along with me and I'll tell you my story.
Just very quickly, guys, I want to thank you so much for helping me get to 15,000 subscribers. I know these seem like very arbitrary milestones, but I really appreciate that you guys have come along with this journey with me. Riding my bike and making YouTube videos is something that I really enjoy doing, and bringing you guys along on the adventure, seeing how much you enjoy it really motivates me. So thank you once again. This whole story starts back in 2020, 5 years ago, when I was 26 years old. Back then, I was a site engineer spending a lot of time on a construction site, waking up early every day, putting PPE on, and not having much of a life outside of work. But there was hope on the horizon. I'd just been allocated to a different site, which was much closer to where I lived. In fact, it was only 10 kilometers away on the other side of the city. I didn't love the idea of driving 10 kilometers, paying for tolls to go over the Harbour Bridge, driving through the city in peak hour traffic, and then looking for a parking spot in the inner west. So, after the influence of some of the people that I worked with, I was told I should get a bike. It wasn't a very glorious start to cycling. I started with this bike here, which is a giant hardtail bike. And while it wasn't fast or snazzy, it fitted the job that I needed perfectly. It gave me a sense of freedom. It was comfortable to ride, it had some decent gearing, and most importantly, it showed me that I could get around without a car. So this is what would become my new route. At the time, I lived just north of the city, about 3 or 4 kilometers in St Leonards. Riding my way down to the Harbour Bridge, I then crossed the Harbour Bridge, take some cycle paths within the city to get to Pyrmont Bridge, ride through Pyrmont and cross over the beautiful Anzac Bridge, and just on the other side of the Anzac Bridge was my new worksite. These early days, my fitness wasn't the best, and my goal was always to get to work in under 30 minutes. It was an elusive goal, sometimes being at the whim and mercy of the traffic lights. But that's what makes a goal so attractive, that it's not easy to attain. I loved the feeling of riding through the city, passing by people walking and driving, and it almost felt like a little cheat code to life. As you can see from some of the footage I'm showing you here, it is a beautiful commute. Lots of cycleways, it was quite nice and safe. And it really was a nice luxury going over 3 different bridges in one commute. Originally, I wanted to narrate my whole commute, but this is what the background sound is like in the city.
Bloody hell.
So you're just gonna have to put up with my voiceover instead. Right now, I'm riding along the Kent Street Cycleway. This will take us all the way through the city down to Pyrmont Bridge, which will lead us out of the city. And while a lot of people complain that the cycle infrastructure in Sydney is not that great, at least for myself, I was quite lucky that the route that I needed to take was actually quite well established. Once I got off Pyrmont Bridge, it took me onto another cycle path which went past the Star Casino, through the beautiful streets of Pyrmont, and some back roads before Anzac Bridge. It's funny to think that a few years ago, this commute used to be the hardest ride I would ever do. Every little hill was a climb, and a 30-minute bike ride was seen as a decent effort. Now, a few years later, I've done over 50,000 kilometers. I had to look that up on Strava to see what my total was. I was actually kind of amazed. A ride like this, plus more, is just a morning cafe ride that fits into my weekly schedule before work. It's amazing to see the fitness and the improvement you can make with a little bit of consistency and a bit of motivation to improve. Now we're on to the most unique cycle ramp in all of Sydney in my opinion, which is getting up onto Anzac Bridge. Not only is this ramp ludicrously steep, it's also got 2 switchbacks. And if you thought riding up this thing is crazy, just try riding down it in the rain. As you turn the first switchback, you see that you've ridden up to the height of the surrounding office buildings. And then when you go around the next one, you see the beauty of Anzac Bridge, the massive suspension cables, and the road leading off into the horizon. This definitely beats sitting in traffic.
So I'd do that whole commute and I'd end up here. I know it looks fantastic. It looks beautiful and awesome, like a nice Greenland park. But when I used to work here, it was a hole in the ground. It's essentially all mud, dirt, and rock. My job on this site as an engineer was I worked in the spoil team. So spoil team, your whole job is the logistics of getting as much dirt and rock off the site out of it as possible. And because there's all these tunnels on the ground, we had there was so much work that had to be done in the logistics of all that rock coming out, going into different trucks, making sure they got out of sight. And it looked nothing like this. In fact, before this was a construction site, it was like an industrial area for the trains. It used to be called Rozelle Rail Yard. And yeah, it was not pretty. So I think it just goes to show how major infrastructure, yes, the impacts of it while it's being built, the construction impacts can be not the best. And I fully sympathize with people who live nearby and get impacted by all the traffic and construction noise. But if you end up with a beautiful product like this, look at that. This is a beautiful cycling destination now with bike paths, bubblers, places for people to exercise. This is such a benefit to society. So even though I was only here for like a couple of months, I'm quite proud that I was part of this project. So yeah, that's how I got into cycling. But now I need to tell you about how I got into YouTube, which is not as interesting of a story, but I'm sure some of you are wondering.
One of the quirks of cycling that I didn't know as a beginner cyclist was that there is a very low barrier to entry, but the ceiling of spending is almost infinite. It didn't take me very long to realize that a lot of road cyclists were overtaking me on my hybrid commuter bike, so I was quite eager to make myself a little bit faster, and I invested in my first road bike. I bought a Cannondale Synapse secondhand off Facebook Marketplace. I paid a few $1,000s for this, and this was my first ever carbon road bike. After riding on a hardtail mountain bike with fat, squishy tires, having a sleek, aerodynamic, and light carbon road bike is just a world of difference. I'm sure a lot of you road cyclists who are watching this video can relate. It starts off with just a simple, small purchase, and it's a slippery slope before you're spending lots and lots of money on bikes, maybe some cycling kit, or various accessories. But that's part of the fun of it. Some people call it gear acquisition syndrome, others call it buying marginal gains. But there's just something deeply satisfying about immersing yourself in a hobby, gaining more knowledge and understanding around it, and then spending your hard-earned cash getting little upgrades.
Some keen-eyed viewers might notice that I'm on a different bike today. So I'm on a Polygon Helios, and this has been loaned to me from Bikes Online. So thank you very much, guys at Bikes Online, for letting me loan this. I'm not actually a big fan of reviewing bikes because I just like my normal setup. But how they convinced me was the value of this bike. So this is my first time riding it, so I'm not really going to talk about how the ride feels or anything. But man, the value is just insane. You can go on their website right now and it's like less than $6,000 for a full carbon bike, carbon handlebars from Vision, Ultegra 12 speed. Like, this is like the kind of bike, I guess, where when I was starting off in cycling, it would have been pretty appealing to me. That initial cost curve of getting into cycling is a bit crazy. I would have loved to have a budget option. So yeah, that's what I'm on today. Yeah, walk in. Green machine. Oh, nice. So noisy. That's a nice quiet room to record audio. In the West. Hi there. If you're new to the channel, my name's Josh. I'm a cyclist in Sydney. I like riding around with my crew, Pastry CC. And if you've been watching my videos and keeping up to date, welcome back. So this This is my first ever action camera. This is the first GoPro that I bought that I used to start my cycling YouTube videos. I got this with my cousin because we wanted to video our gravel adventures. I'll show you some of the footage that we took on this camera right now. I made 1 or 2 gravel videos. I put this GoPro back in my drawer and it disappeared for a long time. And then I just had this feeling of sunk cost fallacy. I'm like, I spent all this money on this GoPro. At the time I was paying like a subscription for the Quick app. And I'm like, man, I need to be getting some value out of this. So I thought, why not bring it with me on some of my road bike rides? Originally, I would put it on top of my helmet or I'd strap it to my chest, which was really uncomfortable and I kind of hated that. But I did like the process of making videos and it all went downhill from there. Eventually, I improved my workflow from editing on like Windows Movie Maker to what I use now, which is DaVinci Resolve. And I think I just loved that process of creativity. I love that process of just creating like a vibe, just telling a story and sharing with people. And that's what's kept me going for the last 2 years. Obviously now I don't use GoPro anymore, I use Insta360, but I wanted to show you guys my very first camera that I used to make videos. So that's how I got into making YouTube videos. And people ask me all the time about making a guide on how to actually make a video from start to finish. And if that's something you're interested in, let me know. I'm a bit hesitant because I don't think it interests that many people, but yeah, maybe we can do it.
Thanks for listening to me yap on about how I got into this hobby, how I got into YouTube and what's kept me coming back. This was a really fun video to make because I think it just goes back to that core principle of just loving to tell my cycling stories. I'm sure you have a cycling story as well about how you got into the sport, so why don't you let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, I think you'd really like the last video I put out where I ride around Sydney CBD at 1 AM at night. Here it is right here. Go and check it out. Alright guys, take care and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.